Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. This is episode number 71. Today is the 11th of January 2021. I have with me Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, namaskaram and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskar and good morning to everybody.
A very happy Monday morning to you, sir. This is the second week of the year, and we are going to take a look at three things today, viewers. Actually, four things. The first thing, we start off with the different things that have been happening from the social media platforms and tech platforms in general on Trump team post the sixth capital address and the riots that followed after that. Sridharji, there's a lot of stuff that is still happening in this. Could you please throw a little bit of light on what is going on? Why is Trump banned for life from some platforms? What is the rationale behind that, sir?
Well, first and foremost, I think that at least the Twitter and Facebook have banned him for life. Now, there seems to have been a call that is made, which is to say that this instigation of riots, according to them, potentially makes him quite dangerous to be on the platforms because he has a huge 74 million plus or 75 million plus followers. In Twitter, if you take a look at his number, it's about 88 million followers he has. So they have taken a decision, and they've given a framework a business framework based on which they have. It's not been very well received by many. Then soon following that, you found that the apps that typically is downloaded from Google and Apple, they have banned the downloading of the applications. So the Trump's team responded by saying they will take alternate messaging and alternate social media sites. So there was a migration to Parler, and then there was migration to alternate messaging platforms like Telegram and Signal and so on. So not to be left behind, Amazon stepped in and they basically pulled the plug on, this is the AWS, the infrastructure services they have pulled. They pulled the stuff. So today Parler is off, lights off. So the infrastructure is not up. They're scampering. They don't believe they'll be up. And in the meanwhile, this whole Trump team has been moving from one to the other and messaging through emails and other things that to say, look, this is what is going on, but we are going to be up and we're working with independent platforms. What this has demonstrated to the world is that United States is no different in terms of its reactions to some of the less developed countries in a democratic way, right? The tools that these people should have used rather than listen to, I don't want to name anybody, but listen to political statements of people and taking a political stance of this nature, notwithstanding the fact they have alternate tools. For example, both Facebook and Twitter is extremely well known to basically pull content out, issue warning, all these kinds of stuff. They never chose, but they took the ultimate step of banning. Okay, so you don't ban anybody without giving a due process. So this is the contention. Even the Russian opposition leader, who has been subjected to this kind of stuff by Vladimir Putin, has come up and said, is this United States what is happening? This seems like more like China and more like some of the extreme regimes. This is what we are fighting in Russia, and now this is coming to United States, is the view. So to me, I think that these public companies must recognize that there is a vast number of people, on either side of the aisle or either side of the beliefs, left and right, are investors in these companies. It must judge from an investor interest point of view and apply the mechanisms that are appropriate, but not banning. These guys are not going to go away. I think Twitter has seen, probably as I speak, about a 7% hit in the markets. There's going to be a protest organized by the Republicans outside of the Twitter office. Twitter's claim is My employees, some of my, not all, I don't know whether it's all, some of my employees have signed and said, hey, the decision taken is correct. So all this makes it not a very palatable situation, the way the tech platforms have behaved, especially when you think in the context of the 230. Okay, the 230 has been in discussions, the power of the tech platforms. This has also sent a ripple effect into the businesses. What will be the case tomorrow if this is what these people want to do?
Yes, indeed. And let's take a quick look at how the world has reacted to Trump's accounts being taken down. The world is very, very shocked at this abrupt action that has been taken against the world's most powerful person. He's still, after all, the president of the United States. Perhaps these two social media platforms could have acted with a little bit of restraint, like you said, take down the post rather than completely shut down the account for all, once and for all. Now, we are going to talk a little bit more about the riots part of this thing in the next few minutes, sir. But the more important thing is now people are flocking towards sites like Telegram, which is based in Russia. And the algorithm and the encryption, they are saying that it's not available. But you and I know that under subpoena, nobody can stop the company from giving data of yours, isn't it?
No, I think that basically under subpoena, even Apple had to open up the hoods. So in a specific incident. So the question is that that they have to open up. They say end-to-end encryption. Yes, end-to-end encryption. But then on February 8th, there's a set of rules that is coming up, which you have to sign up to the new policies. And basically, so Facebook is saying that allows you to have the flexibility to market, access the data and market the data to the services. Because to be honest, WhatsApp is a free service. There's lots of things, so they have to build a business model. To that extent, either you choose or you not to choose. Well, that's a business model, right? But then you can't say, you are not accessing the data. That means you are not. It is fully secure and encrypted, and so hence nobody can access. The fact that you can access and market it is good enough. This is one reason there was a fear that people have to move to an alternate platform. Compounding that is now the specific issue, right? The point that you made about Telegram being located, it's got now, the last number that I heard is 300 billion. And then, in the recent, especially in the last 48 hours, the number has shot up. And it's quite amazing as to if you have been navigating the web and navigating these platforms, how seamlessly the world, it's almost like a seamless migration happening, driven by events and activities. So to finally kind of make your point, this encryption and standards and so on and so forth simply implies it applies for a specific purpose, but as far as they're concerned, all data is accessible under a subpoena.
Yes, and also one other little nugget of information. There was a statement by WhatsApp saying that they will be, accessing your data that caused people to move away from WhatsApp to Telegram and to Signal. Now, there was a lengthy explanation that came out yesterday, and in that, the WhatsApp person, who happens to be, I think, of Indian origin, explained that when you do backup of the WhatsApp itself, at that point the data is actually unencrypted, and that you have to be careful to make sure that the backup doesn't expose your data. So basically what they are trying to say is something in so many words, that there is no back-to-back and end-to-end encryption. In fact, it is true even of things like Gmail. For example, when you are trying to type a mail on Gmail, you see how Google predicts what you're going to type and auto-completes it for you. How can it predict unless it is reading your email? So,
exactly.
So basically, it's this is all, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. We both are techies. We understand our ones and zeros, bits and bytes, and that is our considered opinion, that end-to-end encryption is possible, but that requires a lot of hardware resources, because it is difficult. But there is good news coming down your way. I will keep you informed. There is another platform that probably addresses all this and then some. And again, like I said, the plumbing is quite deep, and it is not easy, and hardware has to also help out in this. So we are going to keep you posted on this. As always, PGurus gives you facts. We only give you stuff, no fluff. So let's move on to the most important
So
thing for the
one
yeah.
other concluding points on this, right?
Yeah.
So we move in. I think this has really created a fundamental fear in the minds of the businesses, which is to say, do the platforms serve business or the platforms dictate business? So this is a fundamental fear, and it'll have a ripple effect, not straight, but as time passes on. Tomorrow, what prevents them from doing something to JP Morgan? What prevents them from doing something to Citibank? What prevents them from doing to Delta Airlines? What prevents them? Right? So this is a fear that has now gone into the minds of the people.
And let's move on to the most important event that we wanted to talk about. The events that led up to what the House is considering now to impeach the president or to have him removed under Section 25. Before that, Sridharji, perhaps you can bring us up to date on what happened on the rioters, how many cases have been registered, what is the status on that. Unfortunately, 5 people lost their lives, I heard, and I don't know if that count is still up to date or not. So please explain a little bit more about what is happening in the House, sir.
Well, I think that's Ashley read it. She's a veteran, and there's a specific investigation that has been triggered. What led to the shooting and her death? Because she swears by the flag and so on. She was one of the first people amongst the 5 to die. So there's an independent investigation going on that. There is Department of Defense have now stepped in. They have registered 25 cases as potential terrorist activities, right? So terrorist cases have been registered. They have found Molotov cocktails, long guns, ammunition, and they feel that potentially a catastrophic situation has been avoided, right? So imagine. So that's the second strand of work that's going on. Then you have the security. Department of Justice is doing an investigation, and then you have the security officials doing. They've registered 55 cases. So what this explains to you is, unless there is a thorough investigation into this, people will call this as a set of people who have inflicted a set of people. So this cannot take a political overtone. It has to be an objective assessment of the situation. There's no doubt many of the people who left that big event addressed by President Trump marched to Capitol Hill, that eventually led to the break-in. You could see the images of people climbing walls and so on, and you can see the people saying, this is not us, this is somebody else, etc. So there's lots of things that flew around that. Okay, there's another Armed Services Committee of the House doing an investigation into the whole riots, what led and who is responsible, etc. Okay, the whole basis of the impeachment is based on this, right? So which is the next segment of our discussion. So this is what is going on with regard to the riots, the rioters, and the cases registered in the investigation. Brian McCarthy of Department of Defense spent about maybe an hour, more than an hour. It is cited that he has made it clear that there would be, and there are 25 cases registered as terrorist cases.
So now let's take a quick look at what Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats in the House are up to. So we briefly mentioned, I think, in our last hangout, that Nancy Pelosi was trying to get in touch with the vice president and that he did not evidently pick up her call. So this was what we had touched upon. Now, sir, today the Democrats say that they are going to bring in impeachment for the second time against Donald Trump. We know how the first one played out. It got shot down in the Senate. Even assuming that the Senate were to be available to take it up, this probably would not have, they would have not managed to impeach the president. So what is the purpose of doing this at this time?
Well, um, there is a historical baggage of Democratic and Republican, especially the Democratic, leadership with the rub off with President Trump. Right from the day he landed, this impeachment stuff has been going on. If you ask to an average person, they're going to say, this guy is leaving the office in 10 days. There's not enough time window to actually conduct an impeachment proceeding and even find and do an impeachment. Then let's assume the date slips past January 20th when new president steps in. So you're impeaching a person who is not a president, but who is a person who was a president in office. It also creates a precedence, which is to say, therefore, can you impeach a president, well after his tenure? It opens up that Pandora's box. The Constitution is unclear. Right now, most of the impeachments have occurred during a presidency. Okay? So there is a trumpet that is going on in the left-wing media. You can conduct an impeachment in 20 days and get this all done with. Okay? Impeach, impeach, impeach. Otherwise, ask him to resign. So just to set the context, this is the process they want to go through. They want to invoke an Article 25, or 25th Amendment, and basically send a message to the vice president and the president's team, which is to say, hey, ask him to resign or you fire him. Unlikely to fire him. They're unlikely to fire him. Once they come back with Mike Pence's, the Trump team's version that he's not going to be fired, then the next step is they've already prepared the articles of impeachment. They have 195 members as I speak, 195 co-sponsors for impeachment. They will initiate the impeachment process in the House. Either they will vote today or vote tomorrow, Tuesday. By Tuesday, they want to vote on the 17 the articles of impeachment, and then send it to the Senate. Okay. Now, the Senate, Mitch McConnell has stated they are not going to meet before the 19th. 19th, 1 p.m. is the earliest time they can take up the impeachment hearing. It only requires a simple majority. It seems like they will get that simple majority. At least 20 to 25 Republican senators seems to be in favor of looking at the looking into the impeachment process. So remember, this is 19th. Okay, they look at the articles of impeachment, then they basically pass a resolution to say, okay, we are proceeding. Now the clock ticks to January 20th, Inauguration Day, when Chuck Schumer becomes the Senate Majority Leader. So he takes that. Then he has to appoint a process. He has to then define process is defined by the House. Then he has to appoint the people who will conduct the due process. So there will be obviously House member would be the prosecution, and they will be then the president will be communicated. He needs to have a lawyer to be the defendant. I think in all probability, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court will be the presiding officer. Then there will be an impeachment committee which will look into the facts of impeachment. Then they will determine, yes, this is an impeachable offense, so therefore we should proceed. Then that then forms the basis for forming the case and arguments and the counter arguments and so on. That's not going to happen in 1 day or 2 days. We all know this whole process. So now we are well into maybe 1 week after that. So the first few days of presidency of Biden is going to be consummated by this whole discussion. Whether it's 1 week, 10 days, 20 days is anybody's guess. And whether it will result in impeachment is again anybody's guess. And also it creates this constitutional kind of uncertainty whether a person can be impeached post his term. That opens up that. So all of this is unclear, sir. But the left media is riveting the drum that impeach. The Republicans, some members of the Republican Party, Lindsey Graham and Jim Jordan and even Kevin McCarthy, is saying, get your senses right. You want to unify the country. You do not want to divide the country. Any impeachment divides the country. It's going to further aggravate the Republican supporters, make this whole thing unpalatable. And we have three challenges: economy, COVID, as well as geopolitics. Okay? And so, therefore, this whole thing looks a big quagmire in terms of this whole impeachment timeline, process, and set of activities.
So I'm somehow missing the subtext here about Nancy Pelosi wanting to do this impeachment. Doing all this stuff, what does it gain her? After all, if president wants to pardon himself, he can still go ahead and do that. You cannot touch him till the 20th. So what exactly is the background plan? I don't know. I don't think we want to speculate on that. But I just want to touch upon one fact, sir, that this impeachment process does not impede Trump from running again in 2024. It might be a different matter that the people may not be looking more favorably because they'll say, after all, this guy was not impeached once but twice by the House. Other than that, there is no legal binding for him not to be able to contest in 2024 should he choose to do so, isn't it?
There are two clauses under impeachment: a simple impeachment, then he becomes technically. Then there is a second, then he's prosecuted. If he's prosecuted, then he cannot run for office. Okay? So I think it's a political focus, in my view, which is they tried the first time, they couldn't make it happen. Now, I'm taking a punt here, okay? Why Nancy Pelosi is doing when she knows that she's on a hairline margin in the House and there's a hairline margin in the Senate, okay? 2022, there's next elections for both House, and there may be some seats qualifying for Senate. It's a political suicide, and generally, when you have an impeachment, it does not help the party which is impeaching, as it happened in 2000. Okay.
So it's possible that they are trying to line up their ducks properly. One. Second thing that I can think of is they know that there is a storm brewing as far as Hunter Biden's corruption cases are concerned. So they want to keep the people looking at something else because the activity is happening here. You want people to look at here. Standard deflection by politicians. But the larger question still remains that will now Pelosi try and make sure that whatever happens out of this impeachment, that something will be left there that will leave room for prosecution, perhaps, like you mentioned, so that they can prosecute Trump even if he gives himself a presidential pardon. I don't know the answer to this. Perhaps you don't know. If you don't know, we will revisit this question. But it's a very interesting perspective, isn't it?
It's a very interesting perspective. This is very much speculated in the media that he can self-pardon himself. Okay, so we are now getting into constitutional kind of gray lines in terms of, even the January 20th deadline is a gray line, right? So we are now getting into areas where that is why there is a Supreme Court justice. How this is all going to be interpreted is predicated by how the case is built. It's also fundamentally built on the basis that he instigated and asked them to inflict damage, right, in Capitol Hill. If he says, and if it is proven that it was just a protest, and they can cite enough precedences where there has not been prosecution, he can say, I only ask people to protest because there is a lot of people believe, the 74 million people believe that this election is fraudulent. 80 million people believe this election is fair and justified and a fair process, courts kind of dismissed cases, all these kinds of stuff, right? And so therefore there's both sides of the argument. So it's very divided. So in these circumstances, he says, protest is my right. This is a democracy. But I never said anybody to go and attack Capitol Hill. I'm a president. I've not done war with anybody. I have struck peace deals. It seems to be like personal animosity. Here's an instance of all the things in the past 4 years. So there may be all these things that will flare up in this, if it gets into this whole debate around, prosecution versus defense, right? This will all prop up. So it's only I can speculate that this is getting into a fairly ugly situation. So the businesses have stepped in no less than 150 to 175 senior execs of the businesses have said these two guys should shake hands and tell the world, look, we are United States, we had our differences, okay? I now wholeheartedly congratulate Mr. Biden, and he is the president, and let's all work with him together to solve the issues. Whether Trump will rise to that, I don't know. Then Biden says, Mr. Trump, thank you so much. We have, helped me to unite, and I want to work for one nation, which is United States. And if they stand up and say that, all these things is gone. That has not happened.
So somehow I don't see the prospect of them shaking hands, because if I remember correctly, in one of the presidential debates, Biden was asking the moderators, "Will you ask this clown to shut up?" That line is still in my head. So there's something that's bad blood between the two. Unfortunately, the world's largest democracy, biggest democracy, I should say, not largest, but biggest or most powerful democracy, let's put it that way, is it needs to really find its axis. It needs to find where its north pole is located. Let's hope that that happens soon. But indications are not so good, sir, because yesterday I was watching a few channels. Now they are drumming up full statehood for Washington D.C. and Puerto Rico. I mean, that makes it 52 states. 50 seemed like a nice round number. That is just my opinion. Why these two should also be given statehood, I don't have any opinion one way or the other. We'll talk about that in our episodes to come. Could you kind of briefly wrap up the markets for us, sir? Do you think that all the FANG, all of them are going to get some blowback from this, isn't it?
Well, I think the certainly Twitter is down. One of the stocks that would take see, Facebook to some extent, has been Facebook, Apple, Amazon have been passive. Twitter has been at the front end of the platform. Twitter has problems around the world. Around the world. Okay. Several countries are now reacting whether they should actually have come up with a set of rules and law which basically regulates these tech platforms. So there will be an impact, definitely. I think Apple Apple and Google clearly will also have some challenges if they have taken, see, Twitter and, one is platforms and second is blocking the stores and third is killing the infrastructure. As I think I mentioned in my kind of comments, that tech as a platform, as a service, has created question marks both in the political community as well as in the business community. Thus far, they had never unleashed their power. And this is where you probably need to appreciate the Chinese and even probably the Russians. They're far ahead of the game and telling the tech boys, okay, you work for us. Let's get this right. Okay, you're not the guys who are going to judge who we are. Okay. Imagine what happens in Hong Kong. Imagine what happened in China. Can these people wag their tail in China? Can they wag their tail in Hong Kong? They'll say, get out. Get out. That's what they've told Mr. Jackie Ma, right? So I think that this has raised. You will see lots of changes now happening around the world, including India, on the power and how these fellows need to be tamed, because they cannot be a national threat, and they cannot be imposing their will based on political biases, which is their own biases, right? Which is one of the big complaints in India, which is to say they've been fairly arbitrary and inconsistent. So to your point on the stocks to go, the markets are down 150 points last, but that's the futures. So we'll see how it pans out. You may see the uncertainty is driven by what is going to happen to the business agenda, right? Which is namely, are these guys going to be consummated to the extent that they're going to drop their ball on COVID and they're going to drop their ball on the stimulus and the money being injected into the economy, because they're all going to be consumed in this. Then what happens is the House and Senate are going to be so polarized and divided, it's very difficult to get a consensus on resolution on many matters of importance. $2,000, for example, opposed by Senate. When you have this thing going on, Who is going to say, okay, well, let's discuss $2,000 stimulus, increase it from $600? Who is going to say, let us increase another $1 trillion to jump the economy? Where entrenched positions are going to be taken, and that is not very good. That's what the markets are reacting to.
With that, we bring today's episode to an end. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same channels. Thanks for joining. Please subscribe to our channel and also donate to it. Namaskar, Sridharji, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Namaskar and thank you, sir.